In the year 2000, if you told a musician that by 2026 you could record an entire album alone in your room, almost for free, publish it yourself, and then have the opportunity for the entire world to hear it instantly, they'd probably laugh at you. But that's where we are, or at least where we were. When the internet went mainstream, there was an explosion of DIY creation. YouTube went from solely poops and home videos that went viral to channels that resembled or surpassed syndicated cable television. MySpace, SoundCloud, and eventually Spotify revolutionized music distribution, Instagram with art and photography, Twitter with on-the-ground journalism. You get it. There was truly a renaissance in art for the common person. Before, art was gatekept by established industry, music labels, art curators, news publication, television networks. That's not always a bad thing. That's how we got things like Toonami, tastemakers and curators, but also gatekeepers who influenced an entire generation with their choices in anime. But for the most part, these gatekeepers controlled, picked, and chose what got through, and everybody else could basically go eat shit. And despite our, explosion of independent media, we're kind of back to this, except the gatekeepers are now the very independent artists that benefited the most from the aforementioned renaissance. Those who gained the most fame and notoriety during the explosion between 2007 and 2014, or those that blew up during the pandemic in 2020, arguably have full control over making somebody a success overnight. For everybody else, the algorithms have been gamified, and if you really want to have a shot at success, if you don't have connections in the industry, you need to follow the unwritten rules or you are dead in the water. However, if there was one industry that never really changed, it was the Japanese manga space. Since the inception of weekly manga magazines, the series that have broken through basically had to make it into one of those publications. Even then, if they didn't do gangbusters, they were canceled and cut. I think back recently to Samurai 8, a manga created by Naruto's mangaka, Masashi Kishimoto, which was published to Weekly Shonen Jump and then quietly disappeared a year later like it never even existed. American comics as well exist within a very closed, incestuous industry, but that's all finally starting to change. We've had some explosions in independent comics here and there since 2000, but recently there's been a large explosion in digital-first comics posted on the internet, especially manhwa out of Korea. Manhwa has all of the bombasticity of manga, but is generally designed around the digital format, making it easier to read on mobile devices, and get this, color. I know, it's crazy, but it's not just the West enjoying these refreshing independent takes on the manga format from South Korea. They're becoming so popular in Japan that it's legitimately got the manga industry worried. And as a champion of independent media, I know firsthand that an artist can survive off of a cult community dedicated to their passion. You won't be buying a Maserati, but you can have an apartment and eat food. So this time, we've partnered with Webtoon, one of the most prominent pioneers in independent comic hosting, to talk about one of the best new manhwa to come out, Fogland. Let's get into it. "50 years ago, a meteor hit the middle of a desert. A giant meteor, right? The kind that leaves a massive gash in the earth so wide and deep your mom would feel represented. You could build an entire civilization inside of it. 5 years later, the world's powers came together to build a prison on the crash site, the world's largest incarceration facility. Yes. Gotta love the prison complex. A place to put the people that no country wanted to deal with anymore. The worst of the worst, as awful people may say, dropped into a hole in the ground and left there. This is Fogland, a manhwa by the artist only known as Pogo, a young woman from South Korea who mostly posts pictures of her grumpy-looking cat on Instagram. And a little more than 21 weeks ago, this work was not officially available in English. Now it is. Now this super prison is a mystery. Some say the facility is actually a secret government holding center for aliens. One researcher even claimed that Fogland opened the gates of hell itself. No one knows what happens inside Fogland. It's an enigma. The truth of it, much like the facility itself, is completely obscured by a thick layer of fog. At least that's all that is known to Dante Kang, one member of a group of teachers hired to educate the inmates of Fogland. He's a science teacher, a bit of a pretentious ass, and he's got a plan to teach the inmates the value of life with sweet potatoes. Because naturally, all these inmates were only thrown in jail due to their lack of education and orange vegetables. Root vegetables. If only someone had been there to show them that they could raise sweet potatoes in a plastic cup, they would have been just fine. But what Dante doesn't realize yet is that his little dream of educating monsters with a life sentence is about to pull him kicking and screaming through a world he never could comprehend. A hell created only for the world's most deranged inhabitants, where the logic of our world no longer holds the bounds of what is humanly possible. His first class gets interrupted by a prison riot, and then when the fog clears, Dante isn't a teacher anymore. He's been dragged deep into Fogland by someone he's never met for a reason he doesn't know yet. Dante is trapped in a place he can't fully comprehend and where the conventional rules of logic and society don't hold any sway. So what do you do when the place you've been thrown into doesn't play by any rules you've ever even conceptualized? That's what Fogland is about. This is a series that just started dropping in 2025 on Webtoon, and it is already doing something special. On the surface, it looks like a hyper-violent action comic set in a prison, and it is that, which was enough to get me started on it, you know my taste. But underneath that is a genuinely creative, unique, and interesting setting and storyline, while asking the reader to seriously consider the contrast between its main characters. When Dante wakes up, he's in a cell. At least it looks like a cell. Stone walls, dim light, the kind of place that makes you immediately want to leave. Oh, and he has a cellmate, of course, inmate 182, which is also the name of my local Blink cover band. Every member is 42, married, and overweight. Regardless, this is a one-armed man with a bag over his face who admits to kidnapping Dante because he wants to learn how to grow sweet potatoes. Dante immediately runs to the door, hoping to find a guard to call for help and find something unexpected. The door is unlocked, and this is the first moment Fogland starts to reveal what it actually is. Outside that door isn't a prison corridor with fluorescent lights and guards doing rounds and, maybe other things to prisoners. It's a village. Hell, you could call it a city. A destitute, lived-in slum that is falling apart at the seams. It's a ghost town completely encapsulated in a blanket of deep fog, and it becomes clear that nobody is about to rescue Dante, or anybody else. The guards aren't on their way, there are no guards. Fogland doesn't need guards. It's one of the things that hits you early in the comic and doesn't really let go. Fogland isn't a prison in any way that word usually implies. It's a society that formed inside a wound in the earth, cut off from the rest of the world and left to become whatever it was going to become. And what it evolved into is enormous, monstrous, and supernatural. The scale of it isn't fully defined, but just based on a map we see a little bit later, it's kind of frame-mogging Los Angeles with an untold number of people living within it. And on top of that, it's gorgeous to look at. Just let me go off on a small tangent here. The color palette is almost entirely grays, blues, and whites. Everything feels muted and shrouded and kind of hopeless, like the whole world is perpetually overcast. Perfectly emanates that feeling of teetering on the edge of hopelessness, while the orange of the inmates' jumpsuits cuts through as the highlight color, giving the muted backdrop a much-needed flair and focal point. It gives the whole comic this quality where it feels both oppressive and alive at the same time, and it really drew me in when I started reading it. And when the violence comes, and it comes often and without warning, kind of like that weird cousin of yours that ate too much lead paint, the artwork handles it with a kind of visceral precision that makes you stop scrolling instantly. Fogland takes hyperviolence to a genuine level of mastery that will leave you fixated on every single page. There's also atmospheric music as well, and a pretty genius innovation. Webtoons allows for custom music to be played if you want alongside of your work, adding an additional layer of atmosphere and immersion. And if it's not something you're into while you're reading, you can pause it as well. It's just a cool extra feature. Anyway, rant over, back to Dante. Okay, so he's taking in his current predicament as the newest resident of this rundown town, Tofu Village. But at least he's not alone. His kidnapper, 182, is a scrawny inmate with an almost childlike curiosity to him. He's just a kid, honestly, who really wants to know how to grow a sweet potato. General hint, if anybody else is curious, you just kind of put it in the ground. But this is the moment the comic earns everything it's going to ask of you, but it also immediately tells you everything you need to know about who 182 is. This is not a villain, this is not a monster, this is someone who, despite their situation, has a genuine desire to learn something new. This first real interaction between our two main characters really highlights the dynamic we're going to see between them for the foreseeable future. Dante, believing he's superior in both intellect and morals, looks down at 182 as scum of the earth, whereas 182 tends to help Dante out, as well as teach him about the customs of Fogland. So what we end up with is a duo where one has no knowledge of the outside world and the other has no knowledge of their current world, creating an interesting dynamic as they travel together. You know, you have this genius idiot and this idiot genius. And the cast of characters you meet along the way are just as wild and specific as the powers they carry. Mr. Plump Dumpling, which was going to be my porn name until I read this comic. Lychee, Rambutan, Heiren. These are people who feel alive. They have histories and personalities. They're dynamic with each other. Their interpersonal dynamics make you feel like you're catching the middle of something rather than the beginning. And then Fogland tends to kill it. Alright, not really. I'm not saying everybody dies, but people do die. People you like will die. Don't expect everybody to make it out alive. And that gives the story this sense of pressure that makes you want to keep reading, right? The plot armor is pretty thin. It's got some of that Game of Thrones early seasons feel, you know? And as we see more of Fogland, it becomes clear that this society is built on one currency. Fog. Fog is the substance that defines everything about this place. It exists as a mist in the air, it's ambient, it's always present, and it turns the eyes of long-term inhabitants pale, glowing blue like spice melange. It also gives everything a little bit of a Silent Hill effect, but when it's concentrated and ingested, the fog does something else entirely. It gives you a unique power and typically something specific, personal, and weird. Like a devil fruit, but, you know, one that you could decorate like an Animal Crossing house. For one guy Dante meets, it gives his legs massive muscles, allowing him to jump insane distances and look the opposite of your dad. That guy's girlfriend can draw exact replicas of maps of an area after just one glance. I think that's also a form of autism, to be fair, but these powers can get as weird and grotesque as a man named Bone Eater who can gather information on a person based on how their body tastes. Ingesting fog can unlock these powers, but it's a drug and an addictive one at that. If you stop taking it after you've gotten started, you go into withdrawal. They call it limbo, and if you know your Dante's Inferno, because obviously this is a new telling of that in a way. Obviously Dante's Inferno has been done a million times before. This is more unique, more new, and more fresh than I've seen it be done probably ever, and that's saying something because the Algieri's Inferno is probably the most redone thing I've ever seen. But if you do know the original poem, limbo is the circle for people who aren't being punished exactly, but who are condemned to exist in a permanent state of wanting something they can never fully reach. It's like being a short king at Costco for all time. And that's Fogland Limbo too. It's not just physical withdrawal, it's the feeling of having had something, your ability or your power, identity, and then having it pulled away. And you repeat that cycle enough times and your brain doesn't recover. The person who went in doesn't come back out. So you keep taking fog. Everybody keeps taking fog. And if you're like Dante and refrain from taking concentrated fog balls, you're still taking it just through breathing. And somewhere in the collective consciousness of this place, a mythology is developed around that fact. The people of Fogland believe that if a single individual intakes enough fog, they will awaken. They will develop a new ability on top of the ones they already have. And if somebody awakens enough times, accumulates enough power, they become the supreme leader. And the supreme leader can lead everybody out of Fogland. So take that, Inferno haters. It's also kind of like the story of Moses. It's like a religion, mythology, and a lottery ticket rolled all into one. However, if you eat too much fog and don't ascend, you fall. And that's a really nice way to say you die. That's what makes it so insidious. The thing that's slowly consuming everyone is the same thing they've built their entire hope of escape around. The exit and the trap are the same door, and everybody in there knows it, and everybody keeps walking through it anyway, because what's the alternative? In a place like Fogland, a dangerous idea you can believe in is better than no idea at all, and fog clearly gives people power, so why couldn't it help them leave? And this is just the premise. I don't want to spoil the entire plot for you because I want you to check this out, but the basics of what we know so far are pretty simple. Dante wants to get out of Fogland. He's an innocent civilian. He shouldn't be here. But there are no guards and there is no escape. The only chance he sees is by journeying into the heart of Fogland, the very center of the crash site where Fog HQ lies. That's where the administration is and where his best chance of getting out alive is. It's not a coincidence, obviously, that the main character's name is Dante. This is supposed to, again, be a new take on Dante's Inferno and the journey through the circles of hell down to when he found Satan with like 3 heads and you're scratching his back and everybody's frozen in a lake of tears because, you know, they betrayed Julius Caesar or some shit. But like I said, I really do think that Fogland has done an amazing job at taking the basic principles of that story and constructing an entirely new and unique framework around it to the point where it doesn't feel like you're constantly being slapped in the face with like, oh, this is Algieri. And if this is how it starts, I can't even imagine how it's going to end, because there are so many mysteries and unanswered questions. But if anything I've shown you about Fogland sounds up your alley, and if you're a regular Bonsai Pop viewer, or even if you're new, I don't know why you wouldn't enjoy a hyper-violent supernatural prison break that clearly has more going on than what's on the surface. I mean, the whole sweet potato thing is very Dorohedoro, if you know what I mean. So if you do want to read it, you can only find it on Webtoon. Check out their app, and new episodes are coming out every Tuesday. But hey, this video could just as easily be about your comic. I know for a fact that we have a ton of talented, passionate people in our community. I'm always going to push people towards going for their artistic dreams, whether it's music or YouTube, art, filmmaking, writing, whatever it is that you love to do. Webtoon is a place where you could do what you love, find a potential audience, and actually get paid doing it, whether it's through ad revenue, built-in donation options, or Patreon integrations. Even if it's only an additional couple $100 a month, or even if it's 50, if you're sitting around drawing comics anyway, get paid to do it and buy some takeout. Seriously, don't waste your skill because you're afraid to put yourself out there, and don't waste your time either. I didn't know what I was doing at all when I started YouTube back in 2014. I learned on the job, and it's taking me incredible places. Did I make cringe? Hell yes, still do. Some of the jokes in this video were inappropriate, but if I didn't make cringe, I don't even want to think where I would be right now. It's never too late or too early to start. Take your shot and put your full pussy into it, and I hope that soon I can hear about your comics. But I do want to personally thank Webtoon. They've single-handedly bought us another month of production budget for the stupidly long videos we have coming out soon, and if you want, you too can help us stay alive over at Patreon. And if not, we'll see you when we see you. Thanks. Bye.